Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tayami and these are the headlines. Pakistan has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to register a protest over ceasefire violations along the line of control. In a statement, the Foreign Office says an innocent civilian was martyred by unprovoked Indian shelling in the Gadi village. It says the Indian forces are continuously targeting civilian population with heavy weapons along the LOC and the working boundary. US President Donald Trump has granted a pardon to his former national security advisor Michael Flynn. Flynn had twice pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI during an investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 US election. In a tweet, Trump congratulated Flynn and his family, calling the announcement his great honor. Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has termed the act as grave corruption and abuse of power. Ethiopia says its military will begin the final phase of an offensive in the Tigray region. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed warned of a final attack, saying a 72-hour deadline to the rebels to surrender peacefully is now over. Hundreds of people have been killed and some 40,000 have fled to Sudan since fighting started on November the 4th. The global number of COVID-19 infections has crossed 60 million with more than 1.4 million deaths. India's death tally has exceeded 135,000 with 524 new deaths and over 44,000 cases since yesterday. Pakistan has registered over 3,300 infections and 40 deaths in the past 24 hours, taking its death toll to 7,843. Meanwhile, Sudan's former Prime Minister Sadiq al-Mahdi has died of coronavirus in the UAE. 5 people have died after a severe cyclone slammed into India's southern coast, uprooting trees and power lines. The Met Office says Cyclone NIVAR made landfall in the southern Tamil Nadu state with winds of up to 130 km per hour. Tens of thousands of people were evacuated from low-lying areas of Tamil Nadu ahead of the storm's landfall. Tributes are pouring in from around the world after the tragic death of football legend Diego Maradona. Brazilian great Pelé, Barcelona captain Lionel Messi and Portuguese star Cristiano Ronaldo paid rich tributes. The Argentinian icon passed away aged 60 after suffering a cardiac arrest at his home. The state funeral for Maradona will be held at the official residence of Argentina's president, who has declared a 3-day national mourning. The headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to register protest over ceasefire violations along the line of control. In a statement, the Foreign Office said an innocent civilian was martyred by unprovoked Indian shelling in the Gadi village. It said the Indian forces are continuously targeting civilian population with heavy weapons along the LOC and the working boundary. The Foreign Office said India's senseless acts are in clear violation of the 2003 ceasefire understanding. It added, by raising tensions along the LOC, India cannot divert attention from grave human rights situation in occupied Kashmir. India has committed 2,840 ceasefire violations so far in 2020, resulting in 27 deaths and serious injuries to 245 civilians. Australia has issued a show-cause notices to 10 of its Special Forces soldiers. This comes after a government report identified war crimes by the soldiers in Afghanistan. State media said the Defense Department initiated administrative action against serving Special Forces members. It stated the personnel served notice are suspected to have been witnesses to murders carried out by other soldiers. The media reported the Defense Department has given the incumbents 14 days to respond to the charges. It added they may also apply for an extension to provide their written response. In Pakistan, 40 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, raising the death toll to 7,843. The Health Ministry says over 3,300 tested positive for the disease overnight. The ministry said there are more than 43,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. It said out of nearly 386,000 countrywide cases, almost 334,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said over 167,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported over 116,000 cases so far. In the capital Islamabad, more than 28,000 have been infected so far. Global number of COVID-19 infections has crossed 60 million with more than 1.4 million deaths. India's death tally has exceeded 135,000 with 524 new deaths and over 444,000 cases since yesterday. Meanwhile, Sudan's former Prime Minister Sadiq al-Mahdi has died of the coronavirus in the UAE. More in this report.
The holiday season is already proving to be a super spreading factor as the COVID-19 surge skyrockets across the world. The latest spike in the Americas alone has infected over 1.5 million people over the past 7 days. Canada imposed curbs in another province, Saskatchewan, aimed to restrict capacities of many public places to slow the spread of COVID-19. Down south, Brazil has reported nearly 50,000 new cases and 654 deaths overnight, pushing the toll over 170,000. While Mexico City has launched a new test and trace approach amid rising cases.
Lockdown's effectiveness has not been fully demonstrated. Many times they are carried out to exalt the authoritarian attitude of an official. You have to trust the people, convince citizens instead of imposing. That too not by force, because authority tends to feel arrogant. It wants to limit the freedoms of citizens, thinking that the citizens are minor.
The World Health Organization's data shows that Europe has been the biggest global contributor to new cases and deaths in the last week. Meanwhile, Turkey has signed a contract to buy 50 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine from China's Sinovac Biotech. France also reported fresh surge in COVID infections and deaths as it registered 380 deaths and over 16,000 new cases overnight. Struggling to contain the pandemic, Germany has extended restrictive measures until at least December 20th.
Daily infection numbers remain at a level that is far too high. Enormous efforts are being made in some of ICUs. Reports from Robert Koch Institute for Infectious Diseases that 410 people died of COVID-19 in the past 24 hours reminds us in the saddest of ways that there are human tragedies behind the statistics, lives which sometimes end much too soon.
Elsewhere, South Korea has reported its biggest cases spike since March. The country continues to grapple with the third wave, forcing it to reimpose tougher restrictions.
U.S. President Donald Trump has granted a pardon to his former national security advisor, Michael Flynn. Flynn had twice pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI during an investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. election. In a tweet, Trump congratulated Flynn and his family, calling the announcement his great honor. In a statement, the White House said the pardon will end harsh victimization of an innocent individual. Flynn responded by posting a tweet carrying U.S. flag emoji and a verse from the Bible. The move marks the highest profile pardon Trump has granted since taking the Oval Office. Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has termed the act as grave corruption and abuse of power. Azerbaijan has rejected a French proposal to recognize the independence of the Nagorno-Karabakh region. In a statement, the Azeri Foreign Ministry says the French Senate's resolution is completely biased and provocative. It said the French Senate should do activities that facilitate peace, stability and progress in the region rather than disputes. Yesterday, the French Senate passed a resolution calling for the recognition of the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic. Well, earlier this month, Armenia, Azerbaijan and Russia signed a deal to end 6 weeks of fierce fighting in Nagorno-Karabakh. The Ethiopian military is set to begin the final phase of an offensive in the rebellious northern Tigray region. In a statement, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said the 72 hours ultimatum for Tigray forces to surrender has expired. More about the Tigray conflict in this report.
Lives of the people of Ethiopia's semi-autonomous Tigray region changed forever on November 4th when bullets and bombs started raining down. Hundreds have died while the devastation has forced thousands to flee to neighboring Sudan. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said the country's military will launch the final operation against the rebel forces. He said the forces will not harm innocent civilians, heritage sites and development institutions during the operation. He warned the public of Mekelle to disarm, stay at home and stay away from military targets. But rights agencies say civilians have already experienced their share of troubles in the conflict.
It breaks my heart. It is a harrowing story. It devastates me beyond I can explain it, to see my country in this situation and how fellow Ethiopians have brutally attacked other fellow brothers and sisters. So it's such an unimaginable tragedy.
Men, women and children of non-Tigrayan origin were butchered for ethnic cleansing in one of the most grotesque massacres of the recent times. The federal government rejected international calls to end the offensive, calling it interference in internal matters. But it called for the international community to condemn the atrocious acts of crimes against humanity in Maikadra.
They have personally visited the crime scene, a mass grave scene. They have seen bodies lying around in the town, actually, because they arrived while this was very fresh. So we've been able to get detailed accounts of what has transpired in Maikadra directly from the victims and their families.
Currently, Ethiopia is at the watershed moment as the deadline given to Tigrayan People's Liberation Front to surrender has expired. The victims wonder if the end to the deadline will prove as a last straw.
Israeli forces have shot dead a Palestinian man near a checkpost in East Jerusalem. The civilian was shot at during the security check. Palestinian officials say the man was taken to a nearby hospital after being shot, but he couldn't survive. Human rights groups have repeatedly slammed Israeli forces for using excessive force against innocent Palestinians. Earlier, 24 Palestinians were wounded as Israeli army soldiers fired rubber bullets at protesters in a bid to disperse them in the Jordan Valley. Israel has also demolished a number of Palestinian structures in the valley. Almost 800 Palestinians, including 400 minors, have already lost their homes in 2020. The UN says Israel's prolonged closure and military operations in Palestine has left Gaza's economy on the verge of collapse. A recent UN report says Israel's occupation cost Gaza's economy $16.7 billion. The report, titled Economic Costs of the Israeli Occupation for the Palestinian People, estimates the cost to be 6 times Gaza's GDP in 2018. It says Israel's annexation and siege have pushed more than 1 million Palestinians below the poverty line in just 10 years. The report stressed the urgent need to end closure of Gaza so that its people can freely trade with the rest of the world. Since June 2007, 2 million Palestinians have been under a prolonged closure inside the 365 square kilometer area of the Gaza Strip. An explosion has rocked a Greek-managed tanker docked at Saudi Arabia's Red Sea port of Shuqaiq. The Saudi-led coalition in Yemen has blamed the Houthi rebels for the attack. The coalition said the commercial vessel suffered minor damage from shrapnel in what it described as A foiled terrorist attack. The vessel's Greece-based owner said it was attacked by an unknown source while preparing to depart from Shukaik. He said all 25 crew members on board are safe. The tanker was carrying no cargo when the explosion occurred. The Saudi Coast Guard says an investigation is underway. China has slammed the U.S. over announcement of its latest sanctions against 4 Iranian entities. At a news briefing, a foreign ministry spokesman said China had lodged severe representations with the U.S. over the matter. Zhao Lijian said that Beijing urges the U.S. to correct its mistakes. Earlier, U.S. Special Envoy for Iran said Washington was set to impose sanctions on 4 entities linked to Tehran's missile program. Elliot Abrams also accused Chinese and Russian entities of promoting Iran's missile program. The envoy warned that Iran must brace itself to face more sanctions in coming months. Iran has released a jailed British-Australian academic Kelly Moore Gilbert in a prisoner swap. Tehran exchanged jailed Gilbert with 3 Iranians jailed abroad. Iranian media says Gilbert was set free in exchange for 3 Iranian nationals. In a statement, Australia's Foreign Minister Marise Ann Payne said Gilbert's release was achieved through diplomatic engagement with Iran. Payne said Gilbert's release has been an absolute priority for Canberra since her detention. After her release, Gilbert thanked her supporters for the diplomatic efforts to secure her freedom. Iran detained Gilbert on charges of spying for Zionist powers and gave her 10 years sentence in 2018. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The U.S. has unilaterally blacklisted Libya's Qaniyat militia and its leader over human rights abuses by the group. Last week, Russia vetoed a UN Security Council resolution calling for sanctions on the Qaniyat group. In a statement, U.S. Treasury Department said Qaniyat group is responsible for the murder of civilians. It said the militia is also responsible for torture, forced disappearances and displacement of civilians. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said the sanctions have been imposed under the Global Magnitsky Act, which allows the U.S. to target human rights violators worldwide. Russia has called on the UN to analyze the damages done by the US and EU's unilateral sanctions imposed on various countries. In a Security Council meeting, Moscow's permanent representative to the UN, Vesely Nebenzia, said the imposed sanctions have bypassed the UN Security Council and the unilateral curbs are illegal. Nebenzia said the restrictive measures have posed serious threats to international peace and security. He said it has weakened the humanitarian situation in the Middle East, Africa, Latin America and some European regions. He added Russia may involve UN regional coordinators to monitor impacts of sanctions on economic revival of countries after the pandemic. The foreign ministers of Russia and Iraq have discussed bilateral military cooperation. In a news conference, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Iraq's defense minister will visit Moscow in the near future. He said the details of the new arms sales with Baghdad will be discussed during that visit of Iraqi defense minister. Lavrov said Russia has a crucial role in equipping Iraq with weapons, including for the fight against terrorism. He added that Russian companies have invested over $13 billion in Iraq's economy. Meanwhile, Iraqi Foreign Minister Fawad Hussain said the two countries will sign 14 bilateral documents covering various areas of cooperation. The Russian military says it has successfully test-fired a new missile of the country's anti-ballistic missile defense system. The missile was launched from the Sari-Shagan fighting range in Kazakhstan. The ministry said the new interceptor missile reliably confirmed its characteristics after a series of tests. It added the missiles struck the notional target with a preset accuracy. The previous test launch of a new ballistic missile was conducted in late October on the same testing ground. Russia's ABM system is designed to defend the country against strikes by a potential enemy's aerospace weapons. The US has granted a 7-day extension to ByteDance to sell TikTok's American business. TikTok's court filing shows the new deadline will be 4th of December. A US Treasury spokesperson said the extension will allow time to review a revised submission by the company. ByteDance made a new proposal to address the Trump administration's concerns. Earlier on November the 13th, the US announced a 15-day extension for ByteDance to reach a deal with buyers. The Chinese firm has been in talks with Oracle Corporation and Walmart to set up a new entity, TikTok Global. Washington's several attempts to enforce restrictions on Chinese short video sharing app have been blocked by the US courts so far. Chinese President Xi Jinping has congratulated US President-elect Joe Biden on his election victory. In his telegram, Xi Jinping said both the countries must stick to no confrontation, mutual respect and the spirit of win-win cooperation. State media quoted Xi Jinping as saying the two countries should promote world peace and development. He said healthy and stable development of US-China relations will benefit both the countries. Chinese Vice President Wang Qishan also extended a congratulatory message to Kamala Harris on her election victory. Xi's message came more than 2 weeks after several other countries had already congratulated Biden. China and South Korea pledged to work together to advance bilateral ties and tackle regional and global issues. At the meeting, China's top diplomat Wang Yi said he discussed North Korea and the pandemic with his South Korean counterpart. Wang said his visit was to highlight the importance of bilateral relations as the two countries cooperate as the strategic partners. He said the COVID-19 crisis could not defeat the citizens of the two countries. South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kwon-wo thanked Wang for the visit and hoped to exchange views to deepen cooperation. Wang's trip comes as the two countries discuss the possibility of the Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul. Xi's visit had been expected early this year but was postponed as the pandemic disrupted the diplomatic calendar. In Turkey, a court has issued life sentences to nearly 500 defendants, including army generals and pilots over the 2016 coup attempt. State media says 25 F-16 pilots have been given aggravated life sentences, while 4 civilians have been given 79 life sentences. The defendants have been accused of attempting to kill President Tayyip Erdogan, toppling and bombing the parliament. Former Air Force Commander Akin Öztürk has also been given life sentence on the basis of attempting a coup. The Turkish government has blamed the supporters of the US-based preacher Fethullah Gulen for the failed attempt of coup. Total 475 people have been on trial and 365 of them are under the custody of Ankara. In Brazil, at least 40 people have died after a crash between a bus and a truck in the southeastern state of São Paulo. Local media said the accident took place near the city of Tanguay, roughly 350 kilometers west from the state capital, São Paulo. The fire service said 37 people died at the scene, with 3 more in the hospital. It was not immediately clear how many people are injured. State police said an investigation has been launched to find out the cause of the accident. In India, police have fired tear gas and used a water cannon to disperse anti-government protesters. Thousands of farmers gathered in the northern Ambala city to condemn Prime Minister Narendra Modi's new farm legislation. Protesters raised slogans and vandalized barricades as they clashed with police after they were stopped from entering New Delhi. Prime Minister Modi's government has defended the reform measures that will allow farmers to sell to institutional buyers. The government said it will still purchase staples such as rice and wheat at guaranteed prices. But such assurances have failed to calm millions of farmers who make up an influential voting bloc in states of Punjab and Haryana. 5 people have died after raging cyclone NIVAR slammed into India's southern coast, uprooting trees and power lines. Officials say over 227,000 people were evacuated from the low-lying areas of Tamil Nadu ahead of the storm's landfall. They say cyclone NIVAR hit the Tamil Nadu state with winds of up to 130 kilometers per hour. Heavy rains inundated the Chennai city while overwhelming its sewerage system. The city's seaport and airport remained shut while the state declared a public holiday. India's Met Agency says NIVAR will weaken to a low depression by tomorrow. European stocks are trading just under the flat line as investors take a more cautious approach after a global rally in recent sessions. The Pan-European stock 600 slipped marginally with trading volumes low due to the holiday season. Frankfurt's DAX and Italy's FTSE MIB have slid fractionally too. London's FTSE has declined around 0.5%, while the CAC 40 in Paris also edged down. Earlier, most Asian stocks traded higher with the exception of Australia's ASX 200. Tributes are pouring in from around the world after the tragic death of football legend Diego Maradona. Brazilian great Pelé, Barcelona captain Lionel Messi and Portuguese star Cristiano Ronaldo paid rich tributes. The Argentinian icon passed away aged 60 after suffering in cardiac arrest at his home. He was battling health issues and underwent a brain surgery 2 weeks ago. What about the football great in this report?
Maradona captained Argentina when his side won the 1986 World Cup, scoring the famous Hand of God goal against England in the quarterfinals. The attacking midfielder played for Barcelona and Napoli during his club career, winning 2 Serie A titles with the Italian side. He scored 34 goals in 91 appearances for Argentina, representing them in 4 World Cups. Maradona led his country to the 1990 final in Italy, where they were beaten by West Germany before captaining them again in the US in 1994. Despite widespread fame and success, his career was not without its fair share of controversies. During the second half of his career, he struggled with drug addiction and was banned for 15 months in 1991. He retired from professional football in 1997 at the age of 37. Following his death, Argentina's President Alberto Fernandez has declared 3 days of national mourning. The state funeral for Maradona will be held at the official residence of Argentina's president. In Buenos Aires, people began pouring onto the streets to mourn the nation's favorite son. Football players and fans have also paid tribute to Maradona. Brazil football great Pelé said, "The world has lost a legend, and one day he hoped to play with Maradona in heaven." Barcelona captain Lionel Messi called it a very sad day for all Argentinians and for football. Portuguese star Cristiano Ronaldo said the world was farewelling an eternal genius and an unparalleled magician who was departing too early. Spaniard Rafael Nadal led the tennis world in paying tribute, saying today the world of sports in general and football in particular has a void.
And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.